Thanks for joining me today, guys. Today we're going to be talking about how to make tree taps out of white-tailed deer antlers. Then we're going to be using those taps to make maple syrup for next to no cost, just out of things that most of us have laying around the house. So we're just going to use an old wore-out bandsaw to cut our antler with. Now, a couple things I'll say is that you're going to be cutting some very small pieces of antler here, so you're going to want to be careful with your fingers around the blade. Obviously, use your head when you're cutting this stuff. Don't do anything dangerous. And another thing is, anytime you're cutting antler of any kind, whether it's elk or deer, it really don't matter. The dust from that is nasty stuff, and you're going to want to most likely wear a mask or at least a piece of cloth over your face or something like that. So as you're gonna see here, one small antler will pretty much make all these taps. There's no point in using your best antlers if you got better uses for them, like knife handles or things like that. I'm just using this little 6-point, and I got all the taps I needed out of this. Now, don't throw your antler away when you're done with it. There's an awful lot of projects you can do with the leftovers. So if you have a good place to put that, it's worth holding on to for knife handles, bow tip overlays, just buttons, even some arrow points, primitive arrow points. There's a lot of uses for antlers, so try to not throw that away. If you think about it, just set it aside. Put it up on your shelf somewhere for later use. Now, after you've cut the pieces of antler that you're going to use, you're going to want to sand all the sharp edges off before you try to do any drilling, before you mess with this antler. I know from experience, it's just best to take all the sharp edges off because they will cut you while working with it. If you forgot to sand this and you had a hold of this while that drill bit caught, it would definitely cut you bad. So just make sure all those edges are gone before you start any drilling. So next, what we're going to do is just start a pilot hole in the top of the antler. And this is just a guide. As you'll see here, I almost always use something to hold the antler. This is just for safety reasons. If you had a vise, that would work great. I found that this slot in my stand here works perfectly fine, so this is what I often use when I'm trying to mess with little pieces of antler and things like that. Now you're going to want as straight of holes as possible with no bends or offset going on, just to make the sap drain out of the tree easier. And I also try to clean those up if there's any burrs inside there. The last thing we're going to want to do is boil all these before we put them in any trees or use them. A few feet of old baling twine, some used wire, and an old whiskey jug makes for a great sap collector without adding any more holes to the tree than we need. I just mark a spot where I want to put my tap, where I know it's going to drip into the jug. And then we're going to take an old drill and we're just going to drill a little ways into this tree. You don't want this too deep. I go through the cambium layer and just into the sapwood. Of course, it helps to have a helping hand. And guys, if you can get your kids involved with this kind of thing, it's going to make life really special for you, and it's going to give you something that you can pass on to the next generation. This is my son Coulter. He's the best thing that's ever happened to me. He does everything with me. Building bows, as you can see, tapping trees, cutting wood, the list goes on and on and on. Coulter knows how to do it. He runs the tractor around the farm with me, of course, with my supervision. But having projects like this with your sons and daughters is so important, and we're really starting to lose touch with that kind of parenting. It's just so easy to put your children in front of a screen nowadays instead of get them outside and actually learn about the outdoors and learn how to work with their hands and be self-sufficient. So Coulter's going to be helping us the rest of the way through this project, and most certainly enjoying the syrup when we're done. I just use the ball end of this handle and give it a few taps to get this set in the tree. Now you're not trying to nail this into the tree. All you're doing is snugging it up so that there's no gaps between the tap and the tree itself. So the sap will have to use the hole we drilled as a point of exit out of the tree. And just like that, we got sap on tap. Can't beat it. Now, in my family, it's pretty much tradition that when you tap a tree, you have to drink some of the sap to see, if it's a good tree, sugar content and such. They pretty much all taste the same in reality, just like drinking slightly sweet water or slightly sugar water. It's a great thing for kids to do, though. My grandpa did it with me, and I think that having a kid have that contact with nature like that is just so important. He's going to remember that forever.
It's coming out of the deer horn.
Coming out of the deer horn. And what's it going into?
It's going into a barrel.
Yep, that's right.
Yep.
And what is it? What's coming out of the deer horn?
Sap.
Sap, that's right. Maple sap.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go do another one.
Yeah.
Thumbs up, dude. It's important to remember that the window of time that it's available to collect sap is actually very short. It's usually just a few weeks, and as soon as the trees start to bud out, it's time to pull your taps and pull your buckets. We're all done. Old mason jars are also a great sap collector. You'll want to make sure that they're big enough to hold the sap throughout the day. You wouldn't want to use anything like a quart. I think it would fill up too fast. If you're like me and you work during the day, you're going to empty these in once before you go to work. You're going to empty them once when you get home from work, and then you're going to empty them again once before it gets dark or before you go to bed. So a bigger old mason jar with old metal lid locks, the strap style lid locks, is perfect. Now don't spill it. How's it taste? Tastes good? Alright. Want to taste some out of this?
Sap, huh? What kind of sap? Apple cinnamon sap. Got it? Okay. Let's get back up to our tap here. Good job. Got it? Want a hand? Here. There you go.
Now your sap's going to want to freeze overnight this time of year, and that's alright. The sap at the bottom of the bucket that's still liquid has the most sugar content in it. The ice is mostly just water.
Okay, Coulter, what are we doing? Yep, we're boiling sap to make syrup. That's right. 5 gallons at a time. That won't make a whole lot. When it's boiled down, it won't make a whole lot. Maybe a pint. Maybe a pint of syrup.
I don't put that ice in there.
So sometimes when you're about to boil over, and you got some of the ice from your frozen sap bucket. Here, Coulter. Now throw that in there and watch what happens to it. Takes that right down to nothing. That's just one little trick to keep your sap from boiling out of your pan.
Now we collected sap every day after work until I thought we had enough to make a few quarts. A few quarts will get most families by for quite a little while. If you wanted to make more than that, you'd probably want a bigger operation. You'd probably want more taps, more buckets, and upsize until you can accommodate how much syrup your family's going to use. Now it might seem like we're gathering a lot of sap for such a little amount of syrup, but keep in mind that the sugar content in the sap itself is very low. Some people say like 2%, and it varies tree to tree depending on the species of maple tree that you're using. You can use both hard maple and soft maple, or some people call them sugar maple. You can use both those species, but what's going to change is the sugar content in the sap. The flavor's the same.
It's awesome.
Good job. Tastes like tastes like sap. A little bit sweet.
Now watching sap boil gets pretty darn boring. So we got the bows out and had some fun. This is just a great way to pass the time, setting targets up, and if you've watched any of my other videos, you know that in this family we absolutely love archery. In the early spring, the nights are cold, but the fire's warm. Work's hard. What a great way to relax at the end of the day with your best friend. This is my old dog Jagger. He's been a faithful companion for far too many years, and I don't know how many more he's got on him. Now when you're ready to take the syrup off, you're going to need some clean glass containers, work great. You're going to need a candy thermometer, something to strain the syrup with, and some butter or Spam to keep the pot from boiling over. We're getting close, real close. Just a few more minutes of boiling, we'll probably be ready. Have yourself a cold beer, you earned it. Now I just used these old canning pots, both outside over the fire and inside, and they seem to do the job, although they're not ideal. You want something with a lot more surface if possible. Now I just used an old candy thermometer, and then I used a spoon for what we call a drip test. They say on a candy thermometer that you're going to want it to be about 220 degrees. I found that the spoon tells you a lot more than that thermometer does. So I like my syrup a little thicker than most. So I just use an old school drip test, and I'm just watching how the sap or syrup now runs off of this spoon. It's going to tell me everything I need to know. And I keep a close eye on that candy thermometer to make sure it doesn't ever get too hot. That syrup's hanging on that spoon just about right for my liking. Our temperature's good. It's time to draw this off and strain it out into our jars. Finally, the moment we've all been waiting for, that brown gold maple syrup, maple heaven, I don't care what you call it, the stuff is good and it's got a lot of uses. We might go over that in a video next year, but we use this on everything. Thank you guys for tagging along. If you've made it this far, now you know how to make some maple syrup. We're going to do more projects like this in the future, and if you're into this kind of thing, please be sure to like and subscribe. I sure like having you guys around, and it's a pretty good community we got here on YouTube. It's time to pull our taps, and we'll do it all again next year.